Welcome to season 4 of the Be Your Own Kind podcast. I am so excited to share some new ideas and experiences with you and also introduce some more wonderful and fantastic people on the platform. Be sure to visit our site, www.beyourownkind.com, to be able to keep up with the latest news and the latest blogs and content. Also, we have a Facebook community that involves giveaways, touch base, and exclusive deals. If you like the content, be sure to tip your girl a matcha tea on Ko-fi, located at ko-fi.com/beyourownkind24. Thanks again for your continued support and enjoy the episode. Well, hello, how are you doing, Julie?
Good, Renita. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Listeners, we have Julie Zaruba on here with us, and I have just been up and down her website, and I just can't wait to get into some things. But before we do that, can you give us like a mild introduction of who you are?
Sure. Thanks, Renita, for having me, and hello to all of your listeners. And congratulations on many seasons of podcasts. I've enjoyed scrolling through them, and I'm sure your listeners appreciate that too. Like Renita said, I'm Julie Zaruba Fountaine. I am a well-being specialist. I'm based in Duluth, Minnesota, in the U.S., and I specialize in health promotion and change management. So I've got an M.B.A. in change and leadership and a master's degree in health promotion and health nutrition and exercise science. So using that and my 10 years of experience in working as a well-being specialist and wellness coordinator, I work with learners and leaders and individuals, teams, and organizations that are what I say the state of the overs. So a state of overwhelmed, a state of overburdened, a state of being overstressed. And that often leads to procrastination and putting things off. And so I work with them to overcome that state of procrastination and putting off. And sometimes that affects our self-worth too. So overcoming those areas and into a state of action so we can dive into our dreams and reach our full potential.
I love everything about what you said. Let's just hone in on procrastination because that is an interesting subject. So I feel like it is often misconstrued with laziness, right? But I love how you explained it, where it's just a feeling of overwhelm, and you're like, you know what, I'm just not gonna do anything because it's just too much. So many piled up tasks. So yeah, so I love that you defined it that way. Like what types of things, or can you give us a little quick trick on how to combat procrastination or work at it?
Absolutely. So one of my favorite tools that I would say when it comes to procrastination, sometimes people think, like you said, it's a matter of being lazy and people are lazy, but I don't think that's the case. Oftentimes there's a gap between what it is you're trying to do and the skills that you have. So there can be a reason that you're not doing it, and that is because maybe you don't feel like you're capable of doing it. So when you think about what you're doing, think about how ready you are to do that thing. And if you feel ready for it, then that's not why you're procrastinating. You can ask yourself, how confident am I to be able to tackle this task or make this change? And if you feel pretty confident, then that's not it. And then the third thing you can ask yourself is, how important is this to me? And then if it is important, then you would need to say, okay, what gaps in my skill set are preventing me from making this change? If you feel ready, if you feel confident, and if it's important and the change still isn't happening, then I would say it's a skills gap.
I love that. So this is a new perspective for me. So procrastination is basically a stall tactic in its simplest form, right?
Yes. Yes, you broke it down in the simplest form. Yes.
I feel like when it's explained in other areas, it's kind of looked down upon, but it's like, it's no different than me. It's basically just putting things off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you can handle it a few different ways. You can look at it. Sometimes when I've been procrastinating something, what I tend to do, I think about, okay, what's blocking me from doing this thing? Because I'm an action-oriented person. Like, I naturally am in a state of action. Like, that's my comfort zone. And so if I'm procrastinating, that means something's happening. And that's a red flag for me. So I think about I go through my checklist. Do I feel ready? Do I feel confident? Is it important to me? And then I will also think, well, if I haven't done this task, is it something that's just not urgent? And that's why I'm putting it off? Is it something that I can delegate to somebody else and have them take care of it? Or do I really have to do it? And sometimes the case is I really don't have to do it. It really doesn't affect my life long term. And so then stop beating yourself up over it and move on.
I love that. I love that advice. This is going to be a soundbite. I love that advice. Like, some things on our to-do list just don't need to be on the to-do. It was nice when we wrote it, but it's not definite. Right. Nothing on your to-do list is definite.
Well, or it could have in that moment been put on your to-do list because you were shooting on yourself. So that's the other piece. Sometimes things get put on your to-do list by other people or what you think other people want. And then sometimes it just doesn't end up being very important to you because it's not, it wasn't yours to begin with. It wasn't your priority to begin with.
I love that perspective. Julie, you got my mind going now. I just want to go so off subject, but let me stay on subject. But I like that because sometimes that is a good point too. Sometimes we are not even prioritizing our own priorities. We Absolutely. Are prioritizing someone else's goals and someone else's dreams, and we're all bogged down by something that we didn't have the passion for in the first place. So, yeah.
I would say most often it happens more than not in the folks that I work with.
I love that. I love that. It's a great perspective. So before we get into your Empower Possible core values, because I loved all three of them, I just want to point out the first sentence that was under the growth-oriented vow. It was awesome. It said, it does not matter how many months, years, or decades you've been trying to change. I think that is so important because I feel like going back to stall tactics that we're like, man, I should have had this done at 20. I should have had this done at 30. I should have, once again, who set these timelines and why? You know, and so I love that because I feel like when it comes to, especially with women, right? We on a timeline, what, to get married, get a house, have a baby. Like we're always on some sort of timeline. And who created that? And once again, that's somebody else's standards and not our own. So I just love this sentence.
I'm so glad that resonated with you. Yeah. Well, obviously they're the core values. So they obviously resonate with me strongly. So that really means a lot because I just value what you're doing with your podcast and with your work and your website. So that means a lot.
Thank you. So, okay. So can you just give us a quick synopsis of your, first of all, let's get into Empower Possible Core as a business and the mission of it. And then can you tell us about the core values of your business?
Sure. So I started Empower Possible for a couple of reasons. The first reason was because I worked at an organization for about a decade, and we would have consultants come in, very well-intended, and all of us, felt strongly about our organization. And so we would take in the information, we'd have all these workshops, we would put other projects on hold, and then the consultant would leave. And to be honest, not much changed. Like it would just, and that cycle kept repeating over and over and over again. And for a decade, it kept repeating. And I just thought to myself, like, there has to be a better way. And I mentioned I got my M.B.A. in change and leadership. And so there were specific instances that were like case studies from my business books that were playing out my organization. And so I absorbed a lot because I was living some of these change processes as well as learning about them. And it was really, as someone that I just love learning. And so it was blowing my mind that I was able to really live out these things. So I had the lived experience of these change in leadership. And then also the behavior change pieces from my health promotion and exercise science degree, supplemented then by life experience. I think both are very powerful and meaningful. Led me to develop this Empower model. And it's a unique niche because Empower is actually an acronym and it's a lot of letters. So bear with me because it's a lot, but it's about engagement, it's about meaning, it's about people, organization, well-being, empathy, and regenerate. So those are each of the letters, and each of those letters, we go through this process through each of the letters of self, social, and systems. So when you look at an organization, or you look at a team, or you look at yourself as an individual, in order to change or in order to take action, you have to know yourself first and be self-aware in order for that change to happen. And for changes can happen, but they might be short-term if you don't do it in a way that actually is beneficial to yourself and meaningful to yourself. So change can be short-lived if you aren't self-aware, but long-term change that's going to empower you, you have to be self-aware. So that's the first layer that we go through. Then we look at social. So think about your friends, and when you're hanging out with your friends, do you think they influence you or not?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's not bad. It's just the truth. Yeah, they influence me too. So you have to look at your social networks and see how they and their social networks at work too. How do those come into play when you're looking at change and looking to make a change? And then the third is systems. So there's seen systems that we are a part of, and there's unseen systems. There's a lot of history about unseen systems in the United States, especially now in the past couple of years. A lot of things have been revealed that been made public that were always there, but just the undercurrent. And so there's some positive reinforcements, but there's also some really negative reinforcements. So unless you tackle all three, you're not going to have sustained change. And that's where I saw a lot of consultants fall short, is they'd be really good in one area, but then neglect the others. And I think my unique perspective of having my health promotion background and then having a business background combined is really what makes Empower. And then the second part was my own lived experience. I started the business. I'm not a risk taker. I think people that knew me were pretty shocked when I said I was going to be starting a business, because it's like the antithesis of everything I've ever done in my life. Like, my life has been very planned and predictable, from what I have control over anyway. And so when I was very nervous about telling folks that I was even starting a business, and it was hard for me to admit that I was going to go down this route at first. But I became so burned out that I felt like I didn't have a choice. I didn't like the person who I was anymore. I didn't understand who I was anymore. And because I was so burned out, it led me to starting this business. Now, on the flip side, I was also looking for jobs outside of my organization and wasn't finding the jobs that I wanted and wasn't getting offered the jobs that I wanted. So after a couple of years of that, I decided, well, I can't go down this road anymore. Something has to change. And I had to start the business because I couldn't get out any other way. I needed income, and I didn't want to have the income from that organization anymore because I wanted to quit because I was so burned out. And then the same month that I became an LLC, I was offered a role that I accepted. And now I have the role of well-being specialist, and I own my business. So it was just, I think, really meant to be. As soon as I let go of the process and really let things roll out, I was given two really incredible opportunities, one to start the business and then the other to have my position as a well-being specialist. And that's what really dives into those core values of growth orientation. So I mentioned I'm a learner. I keep racking up degrees and certifications. I have change management certifications, change practitioner certifications, personal training, group fitness, like all of these things, because I do love learning. And I think the way I grow is through that. You can grow through a lot of different processes, life experience, talking with other people. I think you being a podcast host, think of the growth from each guest. I mean, you've had amazing guests. Each time I hear your guests, I'm growing through that experience. And then joyful success. So for me, I had a lot of success in my other organization. And for the first few years, it was very joyful. I loved it. I thought it was my dream job. And then things changed over time and it became different. But so I really recognize success for me, there needs to be joy involved. Like how we define success oftentimes has to do with material things. And that's important. Like I do want to make a certain income, I do want to have a certain lifestyle. And if there's not joy behind it, it just really it really is a miserable life if you're really successful and there's no joy in what that looks like. So that's where that one came from. The joyful success is because I think if you're joyful, that there's a ripple effect to those around you. And that's what Empower is all about. It's all about the ripple effect. Like if I can impact one person and that person can impact one person and that person can impact one person, like there's a lot of people that can be impacted. And then if it's two people, like, wow, we're going to start something. And then the third one of just thinking about the Empower brings back that acronym.
I love you said so much. I want to unpack a little bit. So I love that you put an adjective on success because you are right. Success is usually viewed as singular. I want to be successful. That's all you hear, but you never hear like, I guess the specific, like what type of success, are you reaching? I've never heard joyful success, and I love that because that's what that is, right? Things that bring me joy, which isn't always materialistic. Like I want to set my own schedule. I want to have freedom. I don't want to deal with attitudes. I want, I want to set the energy.
I promise, no attitude.
Right. Like I want to set that, and I love that. I love that, and I love the fact that you stepped outside of your comfort zone. Like you got uncomfortable, and you just flowed with wherever the flow was, went with the flow, and now you started your own business. And I'm wondering if you're even in shock with where you are today, if you look back at who you were yesterday.
Yeah, so October 2021 is when I started the business and I started my new job. And I remember last October, so October of 2022, writing my newsletter article. So I've got an Empower newsletter that's free, by the way, if you're interested. That when I sat down to write that news article, I really had to think about how far of journey that I went on, and that led me to a new project, a transitions project, because I really was in a state of grief. When I lost my job, I was grieving a dream. I thought I was going to be with this organization the rest of my life. I thought this is what I'm going to be doing. And that dream died. And part of my identity died with that dream. And so that is really, I'm almost just as proud of that, of overcoming that grief and sadness and being able to work through it. I know you mentioned some of your sponsors in your podcast. When I went to therapy, I got help to move through that process because, like I said, I didn't recognize myself. I was experiencing feelings and at such intensity that I hadn't had before, and I didn't recognize it as grief, and I was ashamed. And so I'm proud that I was able to get that help that I needed. And even though, you think you're a wellness coordinator, you're a wellness specialist, like, what do you mean you don't have all the answers? And it's different when it's yourself.
Yeah.
And because you can see it in other people, but when it comes to yourself, yes, I know intellectually what's happening, but your head and heart and your mind are different things. Your mind is different than your brain. Like intellectually, I could tell myself all of the things. Yes, I knew all of the things, but my mind and heart were in a different place. And until I named that it was the grief that I was going through, there was a lot of suffering that occurred, and I needed help to get through that. So I'm very proud of that part. And I'm proud of starting the business too, because that isn't within my normal comfort zone, as you mentioned, but those two things were really over the past year and some change now that really stood out to me.
I love that. I love that you gave yourself space to to heal and to identify in your increased self-awareness, and you gave yourself empathy. I know that seems weird because it's like, how can I have empathy for something I'm actually going through it? But I feel like that is the highest point of empathy, because I know exactly how this feels, and I'm giving I think empathy comes with patience, and allowing yourself to feel how you want to feel. And I feel like people miss that part. It's one thing for you to imagine being in my shoes, but it's another of you trying to understand and being patient with me while I'm trying to walk through this or work through this, So I think that's just super cool that and you're right. No one knows all the answers. I could give you advice from A to Z, and then I'll go lay in the bed and say, "Oh my," and it could be the similar situation. It's easier looking outside. Even with Be Your Own Kind, I thought I was like, so into, my uniqueness and no, actually, I feel like starting Be Your Own Kind was the start of that, like the real start of that journey.
Wow.
Yeah, like speaking to people like you and learning and growing. I've learned so much from everyone that I've spoken with, like you said earlier. And I realized, like, yes, I was at the start, the tip of, getting comfortable who I am. But over the years, I'm just cozy with me. And I think that is because I had to read about it, talk about it, be about it, because this is what the whole brand is standing on. So I feel like sometimes our platform can be our savior in a sense.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that comes through when you're being authentic to your brand. When your brand is an authentic representation of yourself. And I mean, I see that with your interviews and on your website and with your blog, that it does shine through, and it shows that you care for your listeners and your audience, and that comes through. And I think that's why I feel so strongly too about Empower Possible, because I think, similar to your work, like, I want to have an impact, a positive impact, not just an impact, but a positive impact that makes a difference in this world. So a positive impact, positive difference, does good things,
Yeah, you are so intentional in your thinking. I love that. You add an adjective in front of everything. I love that. You're like, I don't want to just make an impact, because there are a million different impacts that can be made. I want to make a positive impact. And I love the way you think. I love how intentional you are in your thinking.
Thank you. I appreciate that. See now why, like the intentionality of being a business owner, like, that is not my lane. The spontaneity of just being like, okay, we're doing this.
Yes. You also have like a ton of great courses. Some of them are for free, you guys. And one of the ones that caught my eye was the course of Feeling Unstuck. You said there were 5 myths to changing behavior, and I was wondering if you could share one of them, and then everyone else can go to the website and catch the other 4.
Yes, absolutely. So to get to the website, I will say, you go to empowerpossible.com, and then I'm going to explain it because it is a little tricky. I'm working on making the website more accessible, but you go to the website, go to Empower Possible, and then you go to the resources, go to more, the resources tab. And if you scroll down and get to that tab, you can click on that, and you can sign up for the newsletter, and then sign up to get into the resource library. So within the resource library, you'll be able to find the freebies, and that's helpful to be able to kind of get that step by step, because it can be a little tricky to navigate and to get into that. So once you're in there, you can find the different PDFs, and there's well-being tips in there, and the 5 myths that I would say to get over behaviors would be that the first one is sometimes people think that change is motivated by fear. And that's one of the things that you can be motivated by fear, but also there's compelling evidence that positivity and inspiration is much more powerful than fear. So trying to use fear tactics to motivate yourself, you might want to try first thinking about motivating yourself in a positive framework. So that's the first thing. Then the other myth is that crisis is also the only way that we're going to change. But crisis isn't always the most motivating. I talked about if it's not important to you, if you're not confident in the change, if you're not ready for the change, you're still not going to make that change. Then another piece is sometimes small gradual changes work for people, but if it's something like an addiction, sometimes you have to have a zero policy. So thinking about which behavior strategy works for you. Like sometimes there is no moderation. I'm more of a moderate person, so that type of approach works for me, but it doesn't always work for everyone. So think about small gradual changes versus just I'm going to cut cold turkey, or some people do dry January, whatever that is. Sometimes the all or nothing works for people, but sometimes they kind of get shamed into doing this gradual approach because that's what everyone is told, and sometimes it doesn't work. So do what you think is best. Another common myth is that really we can't change because the patterns we've developed in early life are just the patterns and that's who we are, and it's not going to change because that's just who I am. And there is a teeny bit of truth to that. We do have our genetics and we do have our life circumstances. However, beyond that, our behaviors really do matter. And with things like cognitive behavioral therapy, building strong habits, changing your environment, those different things can influence you, and does lead to change. So there are a lot of myths out there. Try to conquer them and dispel them as best I can to get the word out. So thanks for providing that opportunity.
Yes, that's awesome. And you're right. I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm old now, so I'm stuck in my ways. No, we're never really stuck. Once again, stuck is a perspective, just like procrastination. Stuck is a perspective. Like, well, it's uncomfortable to change, so I'm just gonna stay here and say this is just who I am. Take me as I am. But no, you can change. So I'm not like, I feel like I'm always borderline when I say, change yourself because it's be your own kind. But it's like I'm not saying change the essence of who you are and your entire identity. I'm saying change those things that will improve your life, your livelihood, or get you one step closer to the life that you desire.
Absolutely. Yeah. There is a certain set point that we all have, a certain set level that we all have, and you can change within a certain range. Right. But the fact is you can change.
And change is inevitable anyway. So I feel like I would want to be more in control of the change and just letting life, deal its hand and just have its way. Like, so whether you want to change or not, you're going to change. Are you going to control that change, or are you just going to let it, be run haphazardly? I don't know.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The world is going to keep moving, and whether you like it or not, for better or for worse, which sometimes it's a good thing, but other times, you just have to go with it.
Yeah, so I guess it's that discernment of knowing when to go with the flow and when to step in, So that's a whole nother subject. I'm still trying to balance that out. So I know that you wanted to touch upon mental health and well-being. You kind of already shared your importance of nurturing your mental health. So I just want to add to that question and say, how do you maintain that balance?
Yeah, that's a great question, because sometimes almost the act of and pressure we put on ourselves to take care of ourselves leads to more negative thinking and more shaming of ourselves because we think we should be doing this or we should be doing that. So it's going to be unique to every individual, and that's something definitely in the courses that there'll be different examples, and in my consulting and coaching services, it's really working with that individual. And what it comes down to the basis of well-being comes down to a couple of different things for me. It comes down to connecting people with their purpose and meaning. So how do you create meaning in your life? And you talk about change, and you talk about, some people go with the flow of life, and sometimes that means they're missing out on their meaning if they don't reflect on that. And that can lead to a lot of dissatisfaction with life. If you don't find meaning in your life, that can lead to a lot of unhappiness and, like I said, dissatisfaction. So really that's the base of it. And then the ability to overcome obstacles. So I know resilience is a word a lot of people might trigger some folks. So I'll say bouncing back from challenges is what I'll say instead of saying that word. But the ability to bounce back from challenges too is a huge part of well-being, because things are going to happen. That is life. And you cannot avoid challenges. You can't avoid, I don't like to say failures really, because I think the only time is a failure is if you're intentionally trying to hurt somebody. I feel like everything else in life is a lesson. So learning from those lessons and learning how to incorporate the lessons you learned into future decisions and future choices and future change efforts is really one of the underlying concepts. So we've got bouncing back and we've got creating meaning. And then the third piece is bouncing back stronger. So that's the regenerate part, is not only bouncing back, but like I said, learning from that. And that's the underlining theme of all types of well-being. So spiritual well-being, financial well-being, physical well-being, social well-being, intellectual, emotional, all of those can be, that foundation is those three elements.
I love that. I love that. And I feel like that when we look from that angle of bouncing back, it's not and take away like the thought of a stumbling block. Because when I think of a stumbling block, I'm like, this wall. You know what I'm saying? I can't. But then I'm looking, but if you change, because your mind, like you said, your mind and your brain are two different things. Your mind creates things all day. What an imagination. So if I turn that boulder into like a little soft little, I don't know, inflatable thing or a trampoline, basically that rock turns into a trampoline. I bounce on that, I bounce off, I keep going. So it's all about perspective, right?
Yes, I love that imagery. That's awesome. Yes, absolutely. Just bounce that thing. And the other point is thoughts aren't necessarily true. Your own thoughts aren't always true. You don't need to believe them because sometimes they're not helpful. So bounce that thought right out of there with the rock.
Right. And the thing is, sometimes you can't control those thoughts, but you don't have to entertain them. They can literally go in one ear and out the other. And that does
and
take
they will happen. Yeah, it's not a reasonable expectation to think they're not going to happen. They will, but like you said, how you react to them or how you respond to them, that's the key piece of especially mental well-being.
Yeah, I mean, I like rebuttals anyway, so I rebuttal it, or like how I just use an example, and I'm like, that doesn't have to be a road. Let me change it because it's all imaginary anyway. That's why I started doing it, because I'm like, none of this is true anyway, so I can just make this wherever I want because it's not true anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks to Barney
Perception.
the dinosaur, see? Okay, so for a person that like they're at an impasse, but they want to change perspective and they want to pour more into them and their dreams and their life, what is some sound advice that you have for that person that's just trying to make that decision?
I would ask yourself first, why? Why am I making this decision? Is it because what's happening right now isn't in line with my values? Is it because right now I'm feeling unhappy? Is it because someone told me that I should be doing this? Is it because someone is I'm looking at someone's Instagram feed and they're doing it, and now I think I should be doing it? like first is the why. Get to the root of your why, and then think about your why and if it's in line with who you are and who you want to be as a person. So those are the first two steps that I would take is some self-reflection on why you want that change. And then I would then take it, once you do that self-reflection, then take yourself through those three questions of, is this important to me? If it's important to you, why is it important to you? Are you ready for the change? If you're ready, how are you ready? Why are you ready? And if you're confident in the change, how are you confident and why are you confident? And then go for it.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry. I love that.
No, it's great.
So here at BYOK, we have a signature question, which you probably already know what it is. But if you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be and why?
Yes, I would describe myself as curious. And I've kind of shared a little bit why already, but I am a curious person. I love learning. I love meeting people and learning their life stories. And I find almost any topic interesting, and I find almost every person interesting. So that's what really has attracted me to well-being, is because there's just so many different areas of well-being to explore. And also being a business owner, as you know, there's nonstop learning because you're constantly thinking about different, or at least I'm constantly thinking about different ways to improve. And so curious would be my word.
I love that. I love that. Julie, where can people find you? If they need you, or if they need a course, or they just need to connect.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Renita. So one way is to go to my website, empowerpossible.com. And you can also connect with me on Facebook at Empower Possible or Instagram at Empower Possible. I'm also on LinkedIn at Julie Zaruba Fountain. And then if you want to email me, you can email me too. And I will respond, I promise. info@empowerpossible.com is that email. And I'd love to hear about other people's journeys and if they have an issue that they're trying to resolve, or if they're feeling stuck in their job or stuck in a life situation, please reach out. The work of Empower Possible and my work is to help guide people through the process, and that's the ultimate goal, so we can all thrive.
I love that. I love that. Is there anything else you want to add before we close?
No, just thank you for the opportunity, and it's been great chatting with you, and I appreciate the work that you're doing and the positive vibes you're putting out in this world. We definitely need more of that.
Thank you so much. And I can say the same for you. Thank you for the positive vibes and the education that you give us to let you know that you're not stuck. Because I feel like one of the greatest ways to get unstuck is to read something or to listen to something, just to get a whole nother. Because I feel like when you get stuck, I think you've reached the ceiling of your understanding. And so that's where educating yourself kind of, expand your perspective. So thank you for what you put out into the world as well. You have such an infectious spirit, and I just love your energy. And I just thank you so much for taking out the time to be on our platform today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Yes. And listeners, you heard all the tools. Procrastination is just a stall tactic, and it's never too late to change. Never too late to change. And when you are thinking of changing, make sure that you explore your why. That's very important. So I know there are many more nuggets that you have learned. Those are the three things that stuck with me. And I just want you all to remember to be kind to yourself and be kind to each other. And until next time, bye.